My name is Bennett Weiner. I'm the CEO of the BBB Wise Giving Alliance. And with me today is Lev Gorelov, and he's the Handshake. He's the co-founder of Handshake, and also its research director, and that's a generative AI software studio. And also Ezra Vazquez-D'Amico, who is director of the digital partnerships and strategy at BBB Wise Giving Alliance. And both of them were key players in creating the AskGive tool that appears on give.org, which was formally launched on August 13th of this year, which is our AA-powered giving advisor. And they're going to talk more about why we did it and how it works and other aspects. I just wanted to mention a few things about the whole AI area in general before we got into the specifics of AskGive. AI has become, I think, one of the most discussed issues in the charitable sector lately for a variety of different reasons. The other thing is that in addition to launching the AskGive tool to help donors, we're also in the process of revising our BBB charity standards with the help of a 20-member charity advisory committee. And the intent that there will be a draft of the revised standards eventually shared with the charitable sector and the donating public and others by the beginning of next year. And we'll have a comment period where people will be able to share their thoughts and reactions before we gather that to help finalize the draft we put together. One of the discussion issues on the revision of standards has been AI, because we wanted the standards to address new areas of concern as well as promise for charities, and how our guidelines should address them. And while the draft of the standards has not yet been put together, we're working on it right now in the process of doing it. But I can say from the discussions that we've had, I think that two key areas of AI that charities hopefully will keep in mind are accuracy and transparency. And we've already heard about AI issues concerning accuracy with things called hallucinations, where AI is being used and comes up with an answer on its own that is totally erroneous. So accuracy has become an AI issue of area of interest. And then transparency, how charities use AI. I mean, the best advice we can give now is that charities are transparent about what they're doing. So explaining to visitors somewhere on the site, if they're using AI, what are they doing? How about it? How are they using it? And if they're using AI to generate any photos or videos for them, to include a disclosure to let people know that's the case, that it's not an actual picture or something like that, to avoid any misinterpretation and misunderstanding as to what's behind it. The other thing I wanted to mention as a last issue is that in March of this year, we held a special event in New York City about AI, charting a future for social good in an AI-driven world. And it was held at an auditorium of the Salvation Army National Office that they have in New York. And it was also the Institute for the Future, another organization that's focused on, forecasts, helped us put on the event, along with GoFundMe as well. And as part of that discussion, there was a 10-year forecast made by Institute for the Future. And they said that, I'll just be brief, that in 2035, AI bots will outnumber humans. So they predict that within 10 years, there'll be more AI bots than people on the planet. And it will be able eventually to translate any idea, language, or discipline. And the other thing that they came out during the meeting is that the AI bots in the future are going to be specialized, such as there'll be AI for administrative functions, for marketing functions, for personal coaching, and there'll be specialized bots, I assume, for the not-for-profit sector in addressing those various areas. So I want to give you a taste of, again, we've launched this new tool we're going to talk about. We are looking to address this in our standards, and that's important. And also, we realize it has significant implications for the sector in terms of changing the dynamic between charities, donors, and other users of their services, and see how that goes forth. So with that background, why don't I turn to Ezra and Lev to talk more about the tool that we created.
Yeah, and definitely please interrupt us as we're going, ask questions. We'll talk very, briefly about the tool, and then we'll get into like a deeper conversation. Want to hear from you all, what you're doing, how you're thinking about AI, whether your charities are working with it. And as Bennett mentioned, this is the first in a series of conversation we're hoping to host. We have one coming up on October 21st with Art Taylor, the CEO of AFP. They've recently built an AI bot, so we want to hear about how they thought about it as well. And generally speaking, we have a special community here of BBB accredited charities. We all share the same values around governance, finances, fundraising practices, self-evaluation. So we can learn from each other. So we'll speak briefly, but then we want to get into discussion. So yeah, overall, as Bennett said, we notice the world's changing. AI is here. It's the hot new thing, and it has been for a couple of years now. We were thinking like, okay, what does it mean for us as an organization? And like most of you, we're all mission focused. So how can we use it as a tool to further our mission? Does it fit well? And we've been working with charities and donors for over 100 years in our various iterations, and trust is at the center of who we are and our brand. So that was very important to us, as we approach any technology. And our product right now, the charity report that lives online, in its first iteration, it came out in a magazine. We still publish that magazine, the Wise Giving Guide, that gets mailed to donors across the country. But then, we moved it online. It became a digital tool. So we're thinking, how can we, evolve that with AI? Because right now it sits online. It's a static report. A donor, donor knows about an organization, they can look them up and see the information all there in one place. But what happens if a donor, especially a younger donor these days, doesn't have an affiliation with an institution and says, hey, I care a lot about heart health or mental health or climate change, especially how it's going to affect communities around the world or animals. How do they connect with a trustworthy charity if they don't have that prior knowledge of an institution? And as there's less trust in institution these days. Luckily, charities are trusted a bit more than government and press and whatnot. But there's still that gap between what people want to do and their knowledge and how they're connecting with causes. So we thought about it and we decided, okay, well, let's put our charity information. Let's see if we can put it into an AI tool and get a conversational bot that can help people connect with trustworthy charities. We also have, a lot of advice articles out there. We publish tips after disasters. We publish, guides on how to do your car donations and whatnot. So we have all this trusted knowledge that we've been publishing. We have a Wise Giving Wednesday post that goes out every week. How can we get that information also into a format that people are going to want to interact with and use in a lot easier way than kind of searching for an article? So we talked with Lev and his colleagues at Handshake and said, hey, how can we do this? Can we do this? But also, can we do this in a way that captures who we are in terms of our values? Again, trust is at the center because the charities trust us by submitting all your information to us, and then the donors trust us to give them that information. So we talked to Handshake about it. And so just generally, Lev, when you're working with an organization, how do you think about translating that kind of brand, the values, the mission into a tool, into technology? Like, what process do you go through, and what do you suggest charities think about kind of when doing that?
Absolutely. So yeah, hello everyone. I'm Lev. As Bennett said, I'm a co-founder of Handshake, which is a software studio and a consultancy. And it started as a consultancy, and that has a lot to do with Ezra's question. I swear I'm going to get back to it. But the thing is, what a lot of people don't realize when they delve into, like, they want to integrate generative AI into their workflows, internal operations, or the way they interact with it, with their clients, most of the work that they ended up doing is not directly related to like composing the tool or writing the code. A lot of the work is capturing these intuitive cultural elements that drive your company and define your company in explicit documented manner, because a lot of companies operate and it's just like a caterpillar that doesn't have to think about all of its legs. It just kind of moves, and each leg knows what it's doing. But nobody has ever went went ahead and wrote it down. And companies suffer from this to various degrees. You know, I'm sure like there's an accounting firm out there where everything is dotted, but most companies don't operate like that. You know, like John just knows to turn to Joe when a certain question comes up, or like in the case of Give, they know that like when somebody calls into their call center and is like, I want to just donate to some animal rights organization, just give me one. And the response is always like, well, there are many. We're not just gonna like point you to one. We're gonna provide you a thinking framework and a selection of like an ocean of these, so you can think through and you decide what you want. And that is a cultural fingerprint. That is tribal knowledge that that defines Give. The thing is, not many people are aware of that, but when they pick up the phone, there's a sixth sense that immediately turns on. They know that that's the route they need to take, but they never sat down and are like, in our calls, we need to do so and so. Always give agency to the user as much as possible. And because nobody explicitly said that, that becomes a problem. You all probably heard of that scandalous study from MIT about that 95% of generative AI projects were failing in a survey that they did of major companies, and the stock market crashed. I really wish people actually read the study before crashing the stock market, because it said nothing damning of AI. It said that most people don't understand that they need to like tell it a lot of things and give it a lot of context. And if they don't, it's going to misunderstand and do something wrong. Just like if you hired an intern, even if that intern read the entirety of the internet and knows lots and lots about everything, if you did not give them the lowdown on how you do things, what is the goal, what is your mission, it's not going to do your job for you. So to get back to Ezra's question, the first step is talking and having like conversations with the leading experts, the people at the call center, everyone in the entire like chain of the organization, and trying to capture these unspoken decision-making frameworks and unspoken values that drive the organization, and writing it down explicitly. And that usually takes like, I don't know, like a third to a solid half of the process before any coding or anything, any AI magic even begins to happen.
So to practically speaking to what Lev said, we put together an AI task force at our organization. And that included, people that work directly with the charities. It included, people from our legal department, included leadership buy-in, obviously, Bennett and, other leadership. And then, obviously the technical people who knew where the data was and how that's organized. And they led us through a process where they really did talk to every department in the organization to try to capture that. And then it was iterative after that to, capture the tone and values. For example, we get a lot of prompts. What's the best animal charity? What's the, number one charity that works on health? So we had to be very thoughtful in how we answered those questions. Bennett, would you add anything?
Yeah, I want to add two things. One is, one of the key things about the AskGive tool that Ezra mentioned, but I want to emphasize, is that we created something that solely uses the information on the give.org website. That's really important because this is vetted information that we have created that we stand behind. It doesn't go off on the web looking for other things or searching 990s on someone's database or whatever. It is just accessing our information on various forms. It's really important. If you have uncontrolled information going in, you'll have uncontrolled information going out, and that's where you get into accuracy problems. The second thing is, it's always important, if you're going to create a tool on your website, make sure you clean house on your website. We all have pages on our website that have gone back, 10 years ago and whatever. It's still there, but you may not want that information being accessed for a tool. So you either will somehow not access that or take it off your site for some reason. And that's also a setup to doing it right. And I know that we're all very busy as organizations, and there's stuff on websites, unfortunately, that we don't clean up as quickly as we'd like. And that's really important. The third thing I'll mention is the value of what we have. It's not just the charity search engine. It really is accessing everything on our site. We have over 500 blog posts on our newsletter. We have over 200 podcasts that are on our site. It takes all of that information, every word uttered and everything, and uses anything in that data to help generate the answers. So if you've got videos, if you have films, if you have all types of different medium on your site, AI can access that. And that provides the ability of, again, users on your site to get that information quickly, and they don't have to go through it and listen to it. It's just a summary coming up that does that. So I wanted to mention those couple of things as important points, Ezra.
And Bennett, you mentioned that, AI isn't a search tool. I'm going to put AskGive up there and ask it a question or two. And then if it's okay, Lev, I'll ask you to explain a little bit about how AI actually works and the prompting and how it directs to different, knowledge bases. So let me do that. Okay, so imagine, you're a donor and there's been a tornado, in your community or somewhere in the United States, and you want to help. So you ask it a question. Let's see. How can I help after a tornado? So right now, what's happening, Lev?
Right now, it's figuring out what type of question that is. So is it asking about a specific charity information and it needs to start digging through a data set of very concrete charities? Or it's asking a general question and needs to lean more on the podcast and a more sweeping type of claims in order to better answer this question? So that was step one. I can go through the other ones if you're ready.
Yeah. Well, and what's this underneath?
Those are V sources. So this is kind of hits on the transparency and responsibility values. It shows you, not only does it never reach out to the world web and pull out random information that is not vetted by Give, it only refers to what's in the database, and it shows you what it referred to in order to make the conclusions that it did. So the user can at any point branch off and be an independent researcher in the traditional research type of sense of going to websites, reading through them yourself, and making conclusions for themselves, and kind of leave AI behind and start working autonomously because of this capacity that we integrated into it, where it always refers back and lets you know what source it's used to make the conclusions in the content that it provided.
So I just asked it another question. And what we're seeing from the actual user prompts is that the questions tend to fall into, I guess, 3 or 4 main categories. One is just for, general tips. How do I get off a mailing list? How do I donate my car? What do I do after a tornado? The next is people ask about charities. So, is Bennett Weiner's nonprofit a good organization? Or what does Bennett Weiner's nonprofit do, with the name of the charity there? And then we also find that people ask about causes a lot. For example, what do environmental organizations do? How can I help? What are some organizations that work on X cause? And then the final thing that actually we learned in the year-long beta period is that people also ask about us. That how do your standards work? Charities ask, how can I become BBB accredited, and whatnot. So I'll put the link here in the chat and for folk to play with.
Yeah, and if you want, I could steal the screen a little bit and kind of show the brains of the model.
Sure.
Since you were asking about how it works.
And the other thing is just to remind people, this is a conversation, not a webinar.
Yeah.
So if you have questions or want to say something, just go out and say it and let us know. And we'll respond, or the others will also comment. Go ahead, Lev.
Yeah, absolutely. Feel free to interrupt me or raise your hand. This is a very organic process. So I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to show you the brains a little bit, and I'm going to actually give it just like a couple of seconds in case someone wants to jump into the question before I dive into this. Okay, moving forward then. So what happens is, this is a chain of events that happen before it reaches an output. So user query, user types something in, step 1, goes through this long chain or a route, one of these routes, and that eventually ends up as an output. This is this is anonymized, so this is like, we're not like disclosing any proprietary details about what happens, but generally what happens is user types in a query, the model first asks, is this the first question the user's asking, or is he asking a follow-up question to something that I already said? After deciding that, it turns to a routing prompt. So what that means is you're not inquiring to a model once. In fact, you are actually speaking to a couple different models with every single question. You ask a question, first that question goes to a model that decides what type of question is it. Is it, as I said, question about philanthropy in general? Is it about a specific charity? Is it about Give? Is it about how does this thing work? Is it about the, what are the other ones? Like, is it a hack? Is it somebody trying to hack the information and have the model just spew out all of the charity information and all the articles onto the user so they can make a copy of a database? It makes a decision, and only then, once the decision is made, that question is routed to another model, and that model answers the question, already assuming that it's the type of question that the router decides that it is. So the router decided that it's a general, about the field of philanthropy question. Okay, well, the model, it'll turn to the model which is instructed only to answer general questions in general ways, and only has access to the information it needs to ask questions, to answer general questions. So it doesn't have access to specific charities because it doesn't need that. It is assuming that the question is general. Or if a routing prompt decided that the question is about a specific charity, it turns to a model or like a specialist, so to speak, which has access to the database of all the charities and knows all the nuance of how Give likes to respond to those kind of questions. So it's trained in the Give kind of culture on how to answer those questions. So replicating this brain and fleshing out each one of these experts to behave the way give.org, or sorry, as give representative would act is much of a culture capture. So we first did that organic surveying. Then we made the decision early. So we're going to make 6 or 7, 8 different routes from what we heard back from the folks at Give. And from what we heard, we're going to decide that each one of these experts should act like this. We're not done there. Afterwards, we need to turn back to the representatives of Give and be like, does each one of these experts actually sound like it's talking like you? No? Okay, then exactly what is off? And we don't want line editing. We don't want it to just say this word is wrong, or I would say this part differently. No, it has to be a collective, generally this is, I would approach this differently. I would approach it like this. We're okay, so we retrain the expert to behave more like the way a human flesh and blood give representative would work. And then it accesses the data, retrieves the relevant documents, and finally generates what you see on the screen. So this is how, far and wide, how the chatbot works.
I would say also, another thought that comes to mind is, I think there is an element of apprehension that some charities have in getting engaged in the AI space. Some of it is based on just a recognition that problems have emerged, and they may be more comforted by waiting until the field has matured more. Others may be reacting to perhaps exaggerated predictions about how AI, could be a danger, and therefore they may be biased because of that influence. Whatever the reason is, I think there is some fear that is out there in general, not just on the charitable community, but I think the business community too, and that probably affects entry into this area. But we've been at this particular project for a little over a year now, and I think the one thing that helped overcome any apprehension that we had is the carefulness that Handshake provided in working up this tool, and also I would say the beta version of this AI tool that we created really helped identify bugs and problems before we publicly launched it. And I think that would be true for anything your organizations decide to do. Do a beta version, let's see how it works, and then react to it before you formally launch it, and announce it, because that's where you get a result that you can be pleased with.
Yeah, and in the charitable sector, again, trust is paramount. There's trust of the stakeholders, your donors, the people you work with. I think in the business sector, it's a lot easier to move fast and break things and be forgiven. Whereas, in the charitable sector, you build trust over so long time, but it's easy to lose it very quickly. Or, even if it's not you, if an adjacent organization does something, some of that ends up on top of you. So, taking that kind of deliberate approach, I think is really valuable in terms of, doing the beta testing, working with a AI organization that's not going to just build another chatbot for you, and, you'll figure out what happens with it later is important. But I think to open it up a little bit, are any of your organizations contemplating AI projects, working on AI projects? Do you personally use AI? What are you noticing? If anybody had any thoughts?
Right now, more behind the scenes use than public facing uses, but I think ultimately the goal is to meet consumers where in the way they're going to ultimately be expecting, which is more sophisticated interactions.
Mhm.
And so, you know, you see now people want less and less direct interaction with people.
Yeah.
Now with AI, a normal chat feature is not going to be sufficient. And so I think we're starting to think through those things, but we have not prepared anything like this that's public facing yet.
Mhm.
Uh,
And Lev, how do you think about that in terms of, um, so as charities, we build trust by working directly with people, by having a brand that donors, have feelings about, that trust. Those relationships are so key. So much of technology disintermediates, the human to human connection, but it also allows, charities like, for example, AskGive can answer thousands and thousands of prompts that someone on our phone line couldn't answer. How do you think about that kind of tension between technology getting in the way and technology kind of helping in those human to human kind of brand connections that are so important for charities?
yeah, absolutely. At first, to answer the question, the single sentence, I think in any application, almost any application, human is better. But if you are turning to technology, generative AI is the most human of the technologies you can turn to. And it offers affordances that humans never could. First of all, sincerity, like the AskGive does not store your IP address. It does not track who the user is. And so it allows this kind of candidness that you might not feel if you called someone. That's very powerful. It also, give experts have this felt knowledge of the podcast. They experienced it, but generative AI would never attain that human touch. Personal opinion, but it could literally look through all the podcasts. I mean, there's no human would ever go through what the first podcast that happened 20 years ago, read into and analyze every single one of them to the last one that was ever published, and keep the same thought in mind and keep the same line of thinking, and then respond with the most relevant piece out of all of that in its answer. So it does allow for a more intimate connection with the data, but it's kind of gets philosophical because it's not an emotional intimacy. It's a technical and practical intimacy where and we do our best with trying to instill that kind of not make it too official, but also not make it just too tongue in cheek or anything. And really, I think there's to what Bennett was saying, many nonprofits are apprehensive. There's some substance to that, because you make the beta quite quickly with generative AI. It's kind of unique as a technology of how quickly you can get to something that you're initially impressed. But as you start working through that beta, you realize that it looks very much like all the slop that AI has generated so much of on the internet. That last 20% of making it really feel like something that represents your organization takes 80% of the work and of the time. So it's how human the technology is really depends on how much effort you put into it. If you put in a lot of effort, it's the next best thing after a human representative of a company.
I think of AskGive, for example, if somebody is going to the library, and before AskGive, there'd be just a big line of books or encyclopedias that you'd have to kind of comb through and find what you wanted. AskGive is kind of that reference librarian that has, the tone that you're looking for. Hey, how are you doing today? Oh, you're interested in animal organizations. Well, here's some things to think about. Oh, I can help you, look for ones that are in accordance, and then presents you with that information and that decision making. The reference librarian never tells you, oh, this is what you should include in your essay.
Yeah,
when you're writing something, or like the theme of your book should be this, but helps you, puts you in the forefront of making those decisions and assists you on your way with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which definitely brings you closer to the information.
Mm-hmm.
But it should never be like, oh, this is better than the humans, we can get rid of all the humans. There's something is missed, and that is important to keep in mind. But considering that, with a traffic of thousands of people, it'll just take an army of people to address that, then AI is the next best thing.
This is Elisa with the Asthma and Allergy Foundation of America. So we're a patient advocacy organization. So we both provide information to patients to help supplement on the information they get from their doctor. But then we also do advocacy and research to kind of address, systemic issues in healthcare. But we're super old school, where we have a hotline that people call for assistance, like navigating paying for their medicines or different things. And there's a really specific population that still relies on this service, tend to be older adults, lower income, and they're not even using our printed, resources, that they still like to talk to a human. So I'm just kind of curious, with your experience, because you're a lot further along in your AI journey than we are, just kind of how you address those challenges of, meeting people where they are. Yeah, I guess I'll just leave it at that.
Well,
Go ahead.
I'll just say a few things. I think you have different audiences for sure. So I think in your organization situation, my guess is that you're always going to have a phone line for those older users who's going to access it. Younger users may be more inclined not to call, but to look online, but yet that's a portion of the population that you're serving. So as you're creating these tools, think of what generation you are reaching out to, and that may also help mold it to best help them. The other thing I would say that has been brought up, but I think it's important, even on our AskGive tool, there is a term of use that you have to agree to before the question is answered. And on that page, it's important to disclose issues regarding any accuracy issues, or how it works, or how the information is going to be used, so that any caveats that you need to make are upfront and transparent. And I think that's especially important when you have any health-related site that is giving health information. You try as best as you can to have the accuracy done, but you do still have to caveat there's always a potential of something not being 100%, and better be disclose that up front for your own risk management protection than to have a problem later.
Yeah, with the increased responsibility, there's more work to be done and more caution to be exercised, but there's also immense returns. For example, as I said, people might not be as candid about their allergies with a human, but with AI, I feel like, it's like the confession booth. They don't see your face. They don't know who you are. You can say whatever you want. Another great benefit is in the call center, somebody calls, they have a conversation, and they hang up, and the fingerprint of that conversation is gone. It's in the ether. If any chatbot, the person says something, that is get transcribed into text, the model responds that with text, then that gets transcribed back into voice. Now you have the exact conversation stored. And with AskGive, and with many of the clients that I worked with, that allowed them to make amazing discoveries about who their clients are and what they want. They were able to aggregate them by theme and discover things like, oh, whoa, a lot of our users are Spanish speakers. That's not I'm not speaking about AskGive specifically, but AI is multilingual, so Spanish speaking community suddenly started asking, or you see that a lot of them are clustering around a single question that you as an organization never thought was a priority. And so the statistical aggregate of what happened in the conversation suddenly starts really opening eyes. But to achieve those benefits, especially with responsibility of a health organization, it means you need to vet that chatbot for thousands and thousands of test queries to really make sure it never says anything that would be poor health advice and malpractice. You really need to put in all that work and add a disclaimer. And it is possible. And it's not magic that you don't need to be like a programmer to do that. You just need a lot of time and patience, because there's no bug to fix in the AI brain. You literally need to like a human, just kind of like tell it where it's wrong, and then keep trying and see if like 1 out of 20 it got something wrong, and you're like, sit it down and explain to it, okay, so you don't do that again, and just go through this like long process. But the returns are incredible, so worth it.
And I would say organizations like yours and like BBB Wise Giving Alliance, Gift.org, we've got an advantage because we have specialized high quality knowledge, right? For example, all the charity data we have is submitted by the charities themselves, vetted by analysts in a back and forth process. We're not the gotcha people. we work with the charity back and forth as much as possible before we publish the report, obviously, and the charity sees a draft beforehand to correct any inaccuracies. So we stand behind that data on our charity reports, and we can feel that way about our tool as well. So I think more and more people are going to start thinking about the quality of the data in the AIs they use. So if you go to a general AI and ask it a question, you don't know where that's coming from. It could be from a joke somebody wrote on an internet blog that informed the AI somehow. It could be from a medical journal, or it could be from anywhere. And similar, like if you ask about a charity, that could be from old information, that could be from somebody's opinion, that could be scraped out of context from a 990 versus that high quality information. So we think that more and more people are going to have specialized AIs that they'll turn to for particular things.
The other suggestion to just follow up what Ezra just said is you may want to start small and think big. What I mean by that is you don't have to create something that answers any possible question from any information on your website. You may decide to have a more narrow AI tool that's focused on one issue and identify it as such, as a way of entryway that becomes more manageable for you, and then expand it as you have experience in dealing with it. And this might be especially helpful for organizations that have a variety of activities on their website because the different audiences they deal with. You may have an organization that's dealing directly with patients, as well as research, as well as public health education and other things. So, the tool is going to be maybe confined to one aspect of that as a way of getting your big toe in the water before you launch something that's larger and a much more involved project than you may want to take on at the get-go. Lev, do you have any thoughts on that about?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's not like any software that has ever come before. And software is clockwork. A traditional software is, as in, if something's broken, there's a gear in there that you can replace, and you can sleep soundly that you fixed the problem because it was broken. You put in new gear, now it's working. With AI, it's more human-esque, in the sense that Ezra lets me know, he's like, hey, I asked the model this question and it gave me a response that is wrong, that should be changed. I try the question 20 times and it does not give me the same response. It gives me the right response. I just have to take it on faith that that is actually a thing that happens. I have no idea how to replicate it. You don't know how to replicate the problem. You don't know how to fix the problem. It's all statistics, as in, okay, so this question sometimes gives you the wrong answer. You tweak the instructions, tell the model to handle these questions in a particular way. Now you ask that question 100 times with a little bit of different wording, a little bit of different angle, see if it stumbles on a wrong response again. And because you can never like really open the brain of the model, it's really best to make to solve problems in the most piecemeal way possible. But the first thing we ask our clients to do is called task decomposition. We just ask them to like take a complex task, like respond to a user's question about a charity, and break it down into the most minuscule and simple steps that they can imagine. That really helps with explaining to the model how to do things the way Give does. And also it helps us like automate first something very small and just make sure it's polished, working, then add a little bit, address some other thing that is small, and then tackle the multi-headed hydra of putting it all together and seeing if it all sticks together and it doesn't make mistakes as the complex problem solver. But yes, always starting small. It's also just encouraging to the team when with that first interaction with AI, they see like, you know, quick wins, quick results, and they kind of like start warming up to the idea, they get buy-in. It's just way better than trying something complex and to wow everyone. And then it works like 89% of the time. Now everyone's left skeptical. So yeah, second that, always great to start with something small and localized and well understood.
The other thought I wanted to add is something I heard at not a webinar, but a seminar I attended in person, in which it was recommended as a suggestion that to better prepare an organization for the future with AI, don't think of AI as an IT expert only activity. And it was encouraging staff members at organizations to be trained, all of them, in understanding how the AI works and how to give AI instructions to give the result that you want. Because it was, the thought is enabling people to think a little bit how the AI tool thinks, and that could influence other approaches. But more importantly, as AI begins to dominate our information universe, the more informed you are about it, the better armed you are in dealing with it. And if you silo AI to just one division within an organization and nobody else, then you're missing out on your ability to better adapt these things to your own use.
In the chat, Barbara mentioned that you're still kind of in the process of exploring AI. If you feel comfortable, mention some of the things that you're thinking about, or if not, you know, Lev, maybe give us some thoughts on, you know, what charities exploring AI should consider, how they should be thinking about it. But Barbara, please, if you're willing.
Okay, thank you. We are an online resource hub. We're a nonprofit that's just trying to connect older adults and their caregivers to vetted resources. And the founder was excited about getting into AI and put a lot of hours into it. We hired someone, our webmaster worked with them. And basically, number one, and not a lot of people were using it, I believe, because the older adults really aren't comfortable yet. And it was more or less a glorified search engine. I think we might have hired the wrong company to do it. So we're now in the process of, we've taken it off. We're stepping back and we're doing a lot more research on what's the best way to do this? Because we know those younger adults that are the adult children, if you will, for the older adults, are really using our service a lot. And they would probably like this, but it's a lot more involved than I think we initially thought.
Yeah.
Which is why he and I both try to get to as many of these kinds of sessions to hear what others are doing, how others are reacting, etc.
Well, thank you, Barbara. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. There's something both daunting and empowering about generative AI is that you can do a lot of work up front, and if you don't do it, you will be not impressed by the result. Yeah, you'll just get some glorified search engine. If you do it, you can actually internalize a lot of the costs that you would with the experts. I mean, if we came into a team, they had their database completely cleaned, organized, shelved, they know exactly what their process is. They have examples of what that output should look like. If, for example, questions from a user, example response of an ideal response that they would like to see, they just cut our work time by 2/3, and that means they cut their expenses for that project by 2/3. We come in, our work is much quicker, and once we get going, it's just like we already have so much guidance. We don't need much time. So there's a lot of upfront effort that you can put in, and the more effort you put into it, the quicker the journey is going to be, and also the more impressive and yours the outcome is going to be. So I highly encourage any nonprofit thinking of diving into it. Don't start by looking for an AI company that is a good fit. Start by asking yourself, how transparent is it to us how we do what we do? How clear and well organized is our data? How can we easily imagine the best exemplar response or output for a specific process? And if you flesh all that out, you'll find that the journeys will be much quicker and much more satisfying.
That sounds like a good plan. I just wanted to mention one other thing. We have a phone line as well, and for people who are not comfortable using the computer. And I don't know how this relates exactly to computer users using our service, but sometimes people will call and they ask for one thing and they really are looking for something else. In other words, they don't really know what they're looking for. And so I have a concern, like you were talking to Eliza, I think it was, about kind of having a disclaimer in a sense, because if someone's really looking for and it's health related, we're not giving them health information. But if they get the wrong kind of service, that still is a black mark. And as opposed to somebody saying, yeah, I called these people, I found just what I needed, or I went on their website, I found it. They have a negative experience that travels even faster.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we've got just about 2 minutes left in our time. I want to be respectful of those schedules. I want to thank everyone for taking time out of your day to talk with us, and especially to Lev and Ezra for their overview of the AskGive project. When we send out the recording to people, for those who attended and those who did not, we'll put contact information for both Ezra and Lev for any follow-up questions or things that you may want. And Ezra or Lev, do you have any final word you want to share before we end today?
Just look out for the next in our series, and then I'll let Lev have the final word.
Always, just kind of want to give more fuel to my clarion call. Don't hesitate. It's really not magic. We've been learning how to convey what we want to beings like other humans, or now like AI since we were 3. So this is really you don't need to learn Python. You don't need to go to a CS major. You just start talking. And I highly encourage you to just encourage everyone in your organization to just talk. And intuitively, they'll start to understand what this creature is and how it works through conversation. And it's fun. I personally enjoy it. I have a psych major. And I think it's like an engaging process. If someone confuses you, just ask it. It will answer. If you say like, wait, why did you decide to do it that way? It will give you a solid response, and you'll walk away knowing that much more about AI. You don't need to take courses. Don't go down the YouTube hole, please. Just start the conversation. And the same goes for me. I would be happy for an email from you. We can always schedule a one-on-one session. Please don't hesitate to reach out and inquire about whatever you're working on.
Well, thank you. And thank everyone again for attending, and look forward to a future conversation.